Hey friends, how are you doing today? Today we're going to be talking about non-sexual physical intimacy. Going to be a really neat chat. I'm assuming that this is starting right when it told me it was starting, which it did last time. So hopefully people were able to pick up on the intro. But if you haven't, hi, welcome. I hope that you guys are having a great day. I do in fact have the whiteboard today, so that's exciting. The first thing I wanted to do today was talk about a very fascinating experience I'm having on Twitter and explain why it is that I guess I won't be using the word allosexual anymore. So I'm having an encounter with someone on Twitter who very much seems to enjoy the attention. So I think I'm probably going to stop engaging this person. But something that this person said is true. This person is discussing how it is, or at the very least, they made the comment offhand that the person, that the term allosexual is homophobic. And they appear to be somewhat correct. The general basis that this appears to have is that some queer folks don't like being lumped together with cisgendered heterosexual folks, which is fair. I understand that. I will stop using that term because that is an accurate criticism of the term. I've been aware of that general approach, but honestly, it's one of those things where for a while I just was kind of okay with it. But honestly, I guess I can understand where it is that people are coming from when they say that that's the reason for disliking the term. I'm not going to tell other people what terms to use or what terms not to use. I'm not that sort of person. But I do understand why some people who fall into the combined category of what is considered allosexuality would be uncomfortable with it. I guess I'll give them preference, but I understand why it is that some aces and some people in the GAD spectrum, the grays, aces, arrows, and demis, are not going to be big fans of that. I get it. Once again, this isn't me telling you guys what to say. This isn't me telling anyone else what to say. Just me explaining personal position. I guess when I talk about people with sexual attraction, people who experience sexual attraction, I'll just refer to them as the, I guess, non-aces. I personally feel like that term is also not great, but I mean, at this point, they're just sort of policing our language out of existence, which is a problem that at some point we're going to have to, confront. But today we are talking about non-sexual physical intimacy. That's a really cool thing. I'm a really big fan of non-sexual physical intimacy, and I understand why this has been a requested topic. I don't really know if I'm the best person to be talking about this because I'm in a long distance relationship, but it's gonna be fun. So here we go. So before we went anywhere, I wanted us to talk about two terms: sensual attraction and contact deprivation. Sensual attraction refers to basically the desire to experience some form of physical pleasure, not necessarily sexual pleasure, that derives from the senses, particularly the sense of touch. That's the definition that people have been that's the definition that is over on the AVEN wiki. This is a really neat thing that a lot of people like. So it's a neat thing that applies to generally everyone. Sorry if I seem out of it. These last couple of days have been really busy, and tomorrow I'm going to be getting some really big news. Some people here follow me on Twitter, and I have been in contact with some of those people. So that's part of the reason why I wasn't active last week. Part of the reason why I wasn't making videos this past week. But some big news is going to be coming down tomorrow. Not entirely sure if the news is going to be good or bad. Nothing medical, nothing like personal, just work stuff. So that's exciting. So if I seem a little bit distracted, that's why. So yeah, basically, sensual attraction refers to either the desire to experience some sort of pleasure, especially physical pleasure, tactile pleasure, which is not necessarily sexual, but it can be. And it's an important thing that a lot of people should know because it applies to everyone, not just people on the ace spectrum. If you are someone who likes being cuddled and you like getting kisses and you like kissing people, not necessarily in a sexual way, that's sensual pleasure, that's sensual attraction. So yeah. The other term is contact deprivation. Contact deprivation is a real thing, which is only recently starting to come into, I guess, the sort of like mainstream usage. It's another thing that isn't unique to aces, but because people think that aces often don't want relationships because aces and arrows are often conflated together, there are a lot of people who assume that if you are asexual, you're also someone who doesn't really like being physically touched, especially without like your permission. And that is something that's true for a lot of people. Once again, a lot of the stuff isn't unique to aces and to people on the GAD spectrum, just general stuff. And contact deprivation is a real thing. There are psychologists and there are people who are studying how it is that physical touch impacts people and the sort of impact that it has on mental health, that are understanding that this is actually a real thing, that there are consequences if you are touch deprived, and that it can affect your mental health. A lot of people don't really recognize that, but one of the big things, and one of the things that was in the definition, let's see. So I have a PayPal. I am trying to set up a Ko-fi for people who are interested. I wish that I could. Also, let me see. Sorry. Sorry about that, guys. I understand that I definitely seem a little bit off. It's definitely because I've just been so distracted today. I recognize that. But yeah, I do have a Ko-fi that exists, but unfortunately it's not usable. I have a PayPal. I guess I'll start to share that. Unfortunately, I won't be able to share that right now. My bad. And I recognize that Smitty said that they had to cancel their Patreon sponsorship. That's cool. I know that sometimes it'd be like that. There have definitely been months when I've had to lessen the number of people that I support on Patreon. And I hope that one day my Ko-fi account is up and running. It's just not up and running right now. I wanted to use it for Pathos because I know a lot of people who use Ko-fi to support their favorite writers, and it's way more popular. And I also like writing a lot more than I like making videos. I'll talk about that when we get to the off-topic section. But yeah, contact deprivation is very much a real thing. It's something that really sucks, and it's something that there are definitely folks who are suffering from it, especially people who are in the GAD spectrum. I also know that it's a real problem for some people in long-distance relationships. That's something that really sucks. And I hope that whatever relationship you are in or relationships you are in, you are able to have an open conversation with your partners and you're able to talk about non-sexual physical intimacy, especially because not everyone likes sexual contact, and that goes the same for people who are on the GAD spectrum. I understand that that's something that is a real problem, and it's important that we be able to have conversations about it. So also, here's the full whiteboard for this week. I'm going to put it down. I'm definitely going to lift it back up in a second, but I've been gripping onto it with like one hand, which is not the easiest thing. I was gripping onto it and then like pushing it forward with my other hand. But yeah, so when it comes to these sorts of things, when it comes to non-sexual physical intimacy, one of the most important things that you guys can do is you can have conversations with your partners. This is stuff that I recommend for every single person. Once again, this isn't a particularly asexuality o'clock topic. This is more of a you guys should talk to your partners sort of thing. And I think that aces are a lot better at having these sorts of conversations than a lot of other people are, because things like sexual negotiations are just a part of dating people who are ace if their partners are not also ace. Having those sorts of conversations is something that some, not all aces, tend to do early on, especially if the people who were ace or with their partners and already knew that they were ace, because then people had conversations and people set a sort of, I guess, precedent for having them. And if not, having those conversations can be tough. I know, I feel you. And I hope that you guys are in a safe enough place that you guys can talk about that. If not, start to do it slowly, little bit by little bit. I also want to point out that it's important that we not make assumptions about people who are on the ACE spec, people who are on the GAD spectrum, who are in the GAD space, because a lot of us actually do enjoy sex. There's a difference between I'm appreciating y'all's comments right now. But yeah, having those sorts of conversations is important because there are plenty of people who are ace spec or who are GAD who do experience either some level of sexual attraction or are otherwise willing to have sex with their partners, or who even want to have sex with their partners. And it's important that we not make that assumption right out the gate that just because someone's on the ace spec or GAD that they don't want those things, because undirected sexual drive is a thing that exists. I had a conversation about this on Twitter earlier, before I got into the big fight that I briefly described. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this video again for people who are interested in those juicy details, especially because not everyone who's here follows me on Twitter. If you don't and you have a Twitter, following me on Twitter enables you to get, I guess it enables you to get into my brain a lot more. I definitely recommend, yeah, I definitely did need a laugh. I appreciate that there's some folks, some funny ass people in the comment section. But yeah, I think that having those conversations is important. It can be difficult, but it can also be really fun. And don't make the assumption that just because someone is on the GAD spectrum or that they are a spec, that they don't want something or that they're not into something unless they've actually given you reason to believe this through their own words and actions. If you guys are having conversations about these sorts of things already, it's easy to move into this sort of thing. But the reality is there are a lot of aspec people and a lot of GAD people who really do like physical. They like physical intimacy. They like having contact with their partners. They like doing affectionate things. And all of that is super cool. All of that's super tight. And I think that that's an important thing. I think that it's often a sort of undersung aspect of what it's like to date someone who's a spec or GAD. And I feel like now I'm starting to get more into the right state of mind. So that's good. My mind's starting to just sort of recover, because I've had a very weird day. This wasn't the only thing that was going on today. It was just one of them. So I appreciate that y'all were with me as I sort of like got into the right mind frame. Yesterday, I was actually supposed to have this, but there was some stuff going on yesterday, so I couldn't quite be here. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to push it back. I'm just going to have it tomorrow. And also, if you guys do like me and you guys like a lot of the friends that I have, like Jamie, then you guys come and check out Zal's channel. Zal uploads videos onto YouTube, but Zal is mostly a Twitch person. And I hope that I'm not misgendering you, if not, my bad, but I'm pretty sure from the past that those are the correct pronouns. Every week, every Sunday, we do D&D. Jamie, Iseth, and a whole bunch of other people and I and Zal go and do a D&D campaign called Critical Role, Chaotic Role. Critical Role is the famous one. We're going to be there one day, but we're not there today. Oh, wait. Oh, Zal, my bad. Sorry about that. What are your pronouns if those aren't them? Also, I know that asking that just so bluntly is like not fun. My bad. But yeah, if you guys do want to see Jamie, Iseth, and a whole bunch of other people, oh yeah, cool. I'm glad that that was the thing I messed up and not the other thing. I am reading comments as I talk about this. But yeah, some things that talk about like physical intimacy and all that stuff, because these can be awkward things to talk about. It's little things, and it involves a lot of conversations with your partners. I would like to believe that ultimately we're going to create a sort of sexual and romantic culture wherein having these sorts of conversations is normal and is commonplace instead of is just being something that we associate and conflate with the state of being queer of some sort or another. But Yeah, and also I got told I was misgendering someone today because I use gender neutral pronouns, and I know that that's like a real thing. I'm not making light of that, but this person got very indignant. This was the person who was like coming at me earlier, and was the person who informed me correctly that words like allosexual can be homophobic. I'm not going to say that they are, but that they can be. That's definitely true. People can use those words in homophobic ways, like conflating everyone together. Kind of sucks. But that person was like really doing their best. The person was actually trans, Jamie, apparently. I didn't know that before, and I'm not saying that to like put doubt on. I'm saying that this person gave no indication at all that they were trans. Not that they owed me that, but it seems like they were just searching for reasons to disagree with me. Thus, fine. Apparently, I am problematic, and I was canceled today. So, sorry, guys. It be like that sometimes. And I'm saying a lot of things in jest, but today has been a weird day, so I hope that people will like bear with me then. To a certain extent, today has definitely been an odd day. But yeah, having conversations with partners about things like physical boundaries is really important. And it goes back to what we were talking about the other week, where we talked about setting up boundaries. People have this weird idea that setting up boundaries needs to be a sexual and only sexual thing, when it can be about so many other things. Setting up boundaries is an important part of any romantic relationship. It's an important part of any sexual relationship, or it's an important part of any platonic relationship. And I'm using platonic both in the aromantic sense and also in the setting up like friends and friendships sense. Setting up boundaries is an important thing that we shouldn't be so ready to just rush and say is only related to sexual topics. Doesn't have to be, shouldn't be. It's really cool to set up boundaries. Setting up boundaries is fun. It enables people to learn where other people's headspaces are at. As someone who has a really funny way of communicating with people, I really appreciate it when people set up boundaries with me and when people are direct. I don't take it as something like that I necessarily crossed a line. I just appreciate it when people are like, hey, we should set up boundaries. I understand that. I respect it. I understand that there are a lot of people who need boundaries to be set up. There are a lot of different reasons why boundaries could be set up, and it's an important part of any relationship. So the reality is, even if you are a straight person dating another straight person, it's cool. And you guys should, if you haven't already worked on setting up boundaries and you think that they might be appropriate, that's totally a thing that you guys should consider doing. And I'm hoping that I'm not like overstepping, because a lot of what this is commentary by an asexual person about things related to sex and relationships. And I think that that's a really funny thing to be talking about and to be having a whole web series about. But so many of my different videos, I'm doing a lot of hand motions today. And because my camera is so high up, you guys can't really see it. But I was just like a lot of really important stuff can be communicated, and I'm hoping that this video eventually helps to create, even in a really small sense, a better culture that talks about things like relationships, mental health, sex, and sexuality, because all of these stuff are really important. All of these things, all of these cool kid items are all really important, and it can be difficult to have these sorts of conversations. It can be difficult to sort of change people's mental frameworks of what relationships are, what sex and sexuality looks like, and a whole bunch of other really important stuff. I think it's important that there be voices out here who are creating this sort of content, even if there are definitely weeks like this one where the content's definitely not as high quality as it should be. I get that. It's unfortunate that sometimes it be like this. It's entirely possible that I will be, it's entirely possible that I'll do another live stream later on this week. I'm not going to be doing an Asexuality O'Clock live stream next week, but I will be doing one the week after, because I'm going to be traveling for a little bit. And that's one of the cool things. A lot of things that don't necessarily seem romantic can definitely be romantic, and a lot of things that provide people with neat senses of like physical intimacy don't often seem to be things that are physically really intimate to some people. A really good example is Tria's comment just now of having their hair brushed. That's definitely something that is very nice. It's something that to some people can be seen as something that you would do with a romantic partner or with a sexual partner or a romantic sexual partner. And it doesn't have to be. Coughing is fun. Coughing is super fun on live streams, guys. Don't you just love this hyper professional quality? But another thing that can be really nice is just hand holding. I know a lot of people who are super into hand holding. That's something that I'm super into. And I think it's because I've been in so many different long distance relationships that like the act of being able to hold someone's hand is something that has deep emotional significance to me, especially because my current partner and I are in a long distance relationship, and we have been in a long distance relationship the entire time that we've been together. We didn't start off in the same area and then have to move away. We started off in a long distance relationship. And it's funny because we actually weren't in a long distance relationship the first time that we dated. When I first dated my current partner, I was in high school and I had just graduated from high school. Some people know this, some people don't, but I was able to spend the entire last summer of my high school life in one relationship, and that was the relationship that I had with her. We were able to do things like hold hands, and we were able to kiss. We were able to be in the same space. And now that we can't, when we are able to do that, that's going to have deep significance, because the reality is contact deprivation does kind of suck. And some people don't like having physical contact with people they're not familiar with. I know that I am not super into physical contact. I definitely don't like to be touched by people that I don't know. That's the thing that just like sets off my social anxiety. And it can be a real problem sometimes, even in professional settings. It's not to the point in my case wherein I can't like shake someone's hand, but anything more than that is definitely not fun. It's stuff that is really frustrating for me, and I'm working on it, but it's also not the easiest thing to work on. And I definitely appreciate that there are going to be times in the future when I am going to be able to make physical contact with someone that I don't experience that same level of like contact repulsion from. And I know that like this isn't something that's relatable to everyone, because even people with social anxiety usually don't find it set off by something as innocuous as that. But there are other people with social anxiety who have something similar, and it is kind of a serious problem for some of us. So that's part of the reason why I find this topic so fascinating. There's lots of really neat ways and lots of really common examples of sensual attraction and sensual desires, with one of the most common ones being, I guess, just the desire to cuddle with someone. And that's something that a lot of people have. It's something that isn't necessarily sexual, and in some cases for the same people it can be sexual in one moment and not sexual in another. And that's one of the cool things about sensual attraction. Sensual attraction can include components of sexual desire, but it can also be completely separate. And for a lot of how is the avoiding contact? So okay, Mark, I think that's a funny comment. I don't mind contact. I can handle it in small bursts. It's just like, it's something that I would definitely prefer to avoid if I can help it. Fortunately, I can shake people's hands and stuff. That's never been an issue for me. But anything more than that is just like taxing on, I guess, the sort of like bubble of energy that I have, the like energy tank that I have for social encounters, which really sucks because I'm a deeply introverted person. So that tank is already not very high, and recharging it is difficult. So yeah, just enough to kiss a baby. That's right. You gotta go if you want to be a politician. You gotta go and you gotta do all that baby kissing. I feel like a lot of people can relate to some of the stuff I'm talking about here, which is neat. Earlier on, before the live stream actually started, back when people on Twitter were still fighting, there were conversations about like what non-sexual physical intimacy was like for some folks. And I think that it was really neat to see what it is that everyone was saying. One of the really common examples was things like cuddling. And another thing that I noticed, and it's not quite so physical, but there are definitely people who like doing things like creating stuff together, and in some cases creating stuff using each other. And that sounds a lot more dirty than it kind of has to, I guess. That's just because of the world we live in. But there's a lot of like really cool stuff and a lot of really cool ideas at play when it comes to having things like physical intimacy. And yeah, and I think, let's see what somebody says. I mean, I think most people have some level of personal space and such, like it just varies a lot. Yeah, and that's actually a really interesting idea when we're talking about things like asexuality, and the idea that asexuality is, I guess, kind of culturally subjective, and how it is for some people from some cultures, what it means for them to be asexual isn't necessarily meaning the same thing as what it might be for other people. And that is a conversation that I definitely want to have. I would love to have a conversation with like a panel of different people from different societies and different cultures who are asexual, and to talk about what it means to them. But talking about such things is so deeply personal that it's kind of difficult to do something like that. I get that. I am very lucky and I'm very privileged in being able to be as open and public about my asexuality as I am. I am a very open and public and dynamic asexual person. I'm also someone who's open about being interested in kink and BDSM. I've mentioned all of this stuff in past live streams. None of this is new information. And I'm very lucky. Most people aren't as aggressive or as dynamic. And I feel like even the word lucky is kind of weird because I made the choice to talk about all these things. I really wanted to expand what people's minds were about asexuality. I wanted to expand people's conceptions of asexuality and what it was that an asexual looks like. And I think it's very fascinating, especially when I think about the sorts of conversations that I've had today and in general about these sorts of things. But for me, non-sexual physical intimacy is a wide variety of things. I think that kissing is a deeply romantic act, and I think that it absolutely is something that can be sexual, but for me, by default, kissing is actually romantic. And that makes it kind of more important than it would be if it was sexual, because I think of things that are sexual that aren't actually acts of like sexual intercourse as being precursors to sex, whereas things that are romantic are ends in and of themselves. And I think that that's something that a lot of people should be able to find somewhat intuitive. I think that maybe the way I worded that could be a little bit rough, but you guys know me. I'm a little bit of a rough communicator. So yeah. And I I really appreciate so many comments, because this last week has been like, if I was doing an after party today, which I am not, although I probably will be doing an after party on the next Asexuality O'Clock live stream, which will be in 2 weeks, I think. Either in 2 weeks or in 3. I will be doing an after party because I already have the subject planned out in my mind. But let's see. The face. Yeah, Smitty, I do mean kind of by default on the face lips, but even the act of kissing in other places can also be romantic. It also, once again, definitely can be sexual, and these things don't need to be one or the other. They can be a lot more than one. That's one of the cool things about sexuality, kids. Let's see, is that it seems too much, and apparently I can understand that. I think that people have like a sort of mental image of like what a non-sexual kiss is, even one that is romantic versus a sexual kiss. And I think it's funny because to them it can seem like a certain type of kissing that is very popular among romantic couples, especially romantic sexual couples, is inherently sexual when it doesn't actually need to be. And it's also true, Smitty is correct, that kissing can be platonic and non-sexual. And that is very much the case for European men and for Hispanic people. I'll tell y'all a funny story. So those of you who know me fairly well know that I was raised in Latin America. It's something that I talk about a decent amount, but I was raised in a whole bunch of different places, actually. I was raised in the Bible Belt and in South and Central America. And before I moved to Honduras to finish high school, or to be in high school, because I didn't actually finish high school there, I was living in the United States. And living in the United States, especially living where I lived, there weren't a tremendous number of other Hispanics. So I had stopped remembering what a Hispanic greeting was. I lived in Georgia. I didn't live in Georgia. I lived in North Carolina before I moved to Honduras. And when I moved to Honduras, the first day that I was in Honduras, I went to go and say hello to a friend who was helping me with the transition mentally and socially. And that friend was Hispanic. She was half Colombian, half white, non-Hispanic. And she was with another friend who was Honduran and who went to the same school that I would be going to. And their greeting was to kiss on the cheeks. I had completely forgotten that that was a common greeting among other Hispanic folks, because there are lots of Puerto Ricans who don't do that. And generally with Puerto Ricans, you only do it with like family members. It's not quite as common to do it with like people that you're just meeting. But that is not always the case. And I'm not saying that every Puerto Rican does this. I'm saying that this is less common among Puerto Ricans than it is among some other Hispanics. So when I got that, I was completely flabbergasted. It took me a few minutes to remember that that was a common greeting. And that's part of the reason why it's important that we start to normalize certain things being not necessarily romantic or sexual, and things just being done either as a sort of cultural norm or as a sort of sensual act. And once again, sensuality is, you know, not necessarily sexual. Can be, doesn't have to be. And especially in GAD spaces and in aspec spaces, when we talk about sensuality, we're talking about it usually in a sense that is not related to sexuality. Not always the case, but it be like that sometimes. And I'm trying to be both general and not general, because I'm trying to speak from my experiences, which were fairly common, but also not representative, because the things that I went through do not necessarily match with what everyone else went through. I don't have my headphones in, because not having my headphones in was definitely like, it made it a lot easier to move this bad boy around and to have it like close to my face. So that way I could have both my face and this in the frame. And also having the headphones made me have to have a tighter space. But because of that, I wasn't able to mute my computer. So sometimes I get notifications. I sure hope that that doesn't like come through in the audio. I don't think it has. Probably hasn't, because I have my computer very close to almost muted. So it's only at like 2% volume. But yeah, and that was definitely like something that was very weird to me. And it's funny because at the very least in the places that I lived, men didn't do it to each other, but women did. So that's one of those things I think is very fascinating. I actually studied anthropology as well as history, and I have a degree in anthropology, which is something that not that many people know, because I actually don't talk about that much. So yeah. So how do I feel about sites where you can hire a professional cuddler? I think that those are very fascinating. I think that those are very helpful to some people. I'm not going to say that that's like a really common thing. I think that people are ready to shame people who hire professional cuddlers, but I'm not going to do that, because if that's a way for people to earn a living, people should do it. And also because those sites do help people. Like, contact deprivation is a real thing, and the consequences can be taxing on your mental health. They can be taxing on your physical health. I have an article that, in the description for anyone interested, I have an article that talks about contact deprivation. And contact deprivation, it's really easy to think that that's like a made up, almost SJW psychology thing. But this is actually like a real thing. Like, people who have doctorates in psychology study it. They've written about it. It's important that we shouldn't dismiss it. And it's a really important job that gives people a lot of emotional and mental satisfaction. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to hire one of those people, just know I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to say that other people are going to be as, I guess, open-minded as I will be, but I'm not going to judge you, because A, we all need physical contact sometimes, or at least a lot of us need physical contact sometimes. We shouldn't shame people who don't feel comfortable approaching their own friends or family for that sort of thing, and who wants to approach, I guess, a professional. It's really funny in my mind to think about what a professional cuddler is, but I'm not going to shame anyone over here. This is a cool, non-judgmental space. So yeah. That said, people should do those sorts of things, whether you are the person who is hiring the cuddler or the person who's doing the cuddling, with caution. You should be careful. Creepers exist, and stay safe, guys. But yeah, that's also, so I really appreciate Chenna pulling through in the comment section. I'm doing this at a different time than I usually do. Usually these take place on Saturdays. So because of that, some of the people who normally do chill out with me over here aren't doing that. I also know that today, some other folks who I'm usually chilling with are doing like live streams at different times than usual. Alignment Unknown is apparently live streaming right now, doing a one-shot, which is super cool. Alignment Unknown are some of the other people that I play D&D with, not Zal's crew, but the crew of Essence of Thought, Utida, Aided Furball, Inane Dragon, and Godless Cranium. They might be. I saw a notification that they were live earlier. But yeah, and also sex work is great. I am a fervent supporter of both sex work and sex workers. I have done videos where I talk about my thoughts on sex work and sex workers. I've also mentioned that I've sold erotica in the past, so I've worked in the, I guess, entertainment industry tangentially, but that is not the same thing as the sex work industry. So yeah, and I think that that's a super cool career. I think that a lot of people are going to shame those people, which really sucks. But I've had conversations about that sort of thing in the past. I've had conversations with other YouTubers and with people who weren't YouTubers on YouTube talking about those things. I had a debate once that helped me get my first 100 subscribers, where I debated someone who was actually perfectly fine with sex work being legal. It was a very surprising position. The person's a theist that some people know. It was Max Dean Esme from Red Pill Religion, who is someone I'm not a fan of, but at the very least, I will say that their position on sex work is a perfectly fine position and is a position thus super cool. Yeah. We ended up getting into a debate, or at the very least, once Max left, I ended up getting into a debate with Kyle from the Non-Sex Show. And this wasn't on the Non-Sex Show channel. This was on Godless Cranium's channel. They were just having a super cool conversation. The moderators were GC and Kyle from Non-Sec, and it was me and Max Dean Esme going at it. We definitely disagreed on some points, but for the most part, we were both generally of the same position, which was very surprising. I didn't go into that debate expecting that to be the case. And then Kyle and I had some disagreements. Nothing was super like major about those disagreements. And as Zal said, that person is an asshole. I agree. I don't like Max. I'm just saying that like on this specific issue, we actually agreed, and it was just really weird. I also don't know what their preferred name is, because I've seen them go by both, and then I've seen them get mad at people for using either of their names. It's kind of weird. But yeah, that person, not a cool person. That conversation, though, surprisingly not bad. I think I probably will make more content talking about sex work and stuff in the future. I also made a video talking about Fasta Sesta and the dumpster fire that is Fasta Sesta. I talked about Fasta Sesta several years ago when it was first becoming a thing that people were talking about. Not several years ago. I talked about it last year when I was still living in Greensboro. And I argued against it. I didn't have like a fun video about it. I was like, hey, this is a serious topic. Gonna talk about it seriously. Dumpster fire of a bill. People who support it, including people I like, are dumpster fire people on this particular issue. That sucks. And I've also written about sex work in places like Honduras where it's actually legal, something that people don't know. There's limitations, and the way that Honduras handles it is bad, but sex work in Honduras is legal. Last time I checked. There have been so many chaotic things going on in Honduras that I actually might be wrong now, but I know that when I was in Honduras, sex work was legal. And up until, at the very least, 2017, it was also legal. Don't want to say that it still is. Could be wrong. But yeah, also, there are asexual sex workers. I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't realize. That's a cool thing. That's all I really got to say about that. I've mentioned this in the past because I've talked about Dear Mr. Atheist's video where they had a conversation with an asexual sex worker. Super cool video. Definitely people should check that video out. It was super neat of Jimmy to give that person a bigger platform and to let that person talk about their own experiences in an intelligent and compassionate way. And I wish that more people would do stuff like that. I would love to have conversations with asexual sex workers if any of them would ever like to come onto my channel. That's just the thing. I really like having these sorts of conversations. I study this area and I like do research into it. So I talk about it from the point of view of, I guess, someone who's an academic and an ally, but I don't have firsthand experience, and I'm not going to claim that. So yeah, and people definitely should check out all those people. But yeah, some more stuff about non-sexual physical intimacy is that it's just super tight. I feel like it's deeply undervalued, and I think that some people who are better at having conversations about it are people who are in long-distance relationships. I know that I've been on so many long-distance relationships that the idea of being able to actually be in the same space as whoever it is that I'm dating is something that can take on a level of deep significance, and it's a sign, not quite that, like, we made it, but it's a sign that, like, at the very least, we're going to be able to spend some time together. We're going to be able to be in the same space. We're not just going to have to text each other. We're actually going to be able to see each other. I don't know what that word means, and it's funny because I can recognize that it's like an ichi term, but I don't know what it means. Oh yeah, and the cornflakes thing. There's a really funny drunk history video, just high quality content that is about the history of cornflakes. I had never heard about that before. I knew that there was some like kooky history behind cornflakes, but yeah. So if you guys want to check that out next, you absolutely should. Just type in cornflakes drunk history. There's like it's like a really long video, and it has the Wilson brothers, Owen Wilson and Owen Wilson's brother, who play the brothers behind cornflakes, and it's just a really neat thing. I recommend that people check it out. I'm genuinely curious as to what I'm really curious as to what that word is, because I know a word that's spelled very similar that I know a word that's spelled very similarly to that, which is also an ichi term, and it is a very interesting ichi term. That's all I'm gonna say. If you come here and you Google stuff, you're apparently gonna learn a lot. Oh, is that what that is? Do I have one of those? You guys, I can technically see myself, but like because I can't see well, I don't often do that much stuff with my like hair. So if I had, I guess, like a cowlick or whatever, that sucks. Yes, Smitty is correct. That's the word I was referencing, and that's what I thought was going on. And I was thinking to myself, did I make that face? Because like if I did, that's not my intention. But I mean, I guess if that's something that you notice, that's something that you notice. I didn't know that the Dollop podcast also did an episode on that. I'm definitely going to check it out. But yeah, so non-sexual physical intimacy can mean so many different things for a lot of different people. If you're in a long-distance relationship, it can mean just being in the same space. It can mean just being able to reach out your hand and hold your significant other's hand. It can also mean kissing in ways that are not sexual. It can mean being able to fall asleep together. And all of those things are significant. All of those things really matter in every relationship. I think it might be back. I think now that I know what it is it like this little hair here? I actually do that. I actually have that in like a lot of my videos, and then in some cases I like reshoot the footage, but in other cases I just don't feel like doing that. I feel like that's just so much work. But non-sexual physical intimacy is, in my opinion, as someone who's aspec, one of the most important components of a relationship that is romantic. I'm not going to say that that's everyone's opinion. Once again, I don't use generalizing language here, at least not intentionally. But in my case, non-sexual physical intimacy is extraordinarily important because I do want to spend time in the same space as my partners. I want to be with my partners, whoever they happen to be at that particular point of time. I want to be able to hold their hands. I want to be able to kiss them. I want to be able to physically comfort them. And all of this stuff is really important. It matters in every relationship, not just in aspec ones, but since we're here and this is, in a space, it is really important that we have conversations about this. I worry about the fact that some people conflate asexuality with contact repulsion. And there definitely can be components of contact repulsion to asexuality. I'm not saying that there are, I'm saying that there can be, because I experience some level of contact aversion, words. I experienced some levels of that myself. I can relate to other people who experience it. And it's really important that there be ace spaces and gad spaces that are open and that are honest about these sorts of things. Because some asexual people do experience things like sexual aversion and contact aversion. And these things are sucky to deal with. They're not easy, especially when we live in a society that values sexuality and physical intimacy of both sexual and non-sexual varieties so much that the idea that sometimes we experience some level of aversion to those things makes people think that we're broken. And that's a real problem. It's a real sucky thing. And ultimately, at some point, we're going to have to confront that. I'm hoping that by having these sorts of conversations, I am gradually helping people create mental frameworks from which we can confront them. But at the same time, I personally think that non-sexual physical intimacy, when everyone involved wants it, is a really important thing. And for me, it is really important because I do like being able to be physically intimate with people that I trust and with people that I respect. I don't want people touching all over me when I am not, when I don't know them, when I don't understand them. But yeah, it started off really serious and then just sort of wandered off. And that's honestly like my mind state like 97% of the time. I hope that people who are watching this like also have fun, because I know that I talk about some serious stuff. I talk about some heavy stuff a lot. And it's because these conversations can be difficult. A lot of people exist in spaces wherein there's no one who's willing to have these conversations. But they are really important conversations. They're necessary conversations that are going to help us develop a healthier social and cultural view of things like sex, sexuality, contact, and all of that stuff. And also, if people do that to me, Smitty, I wouldn't be a fan of it. That wouldn't be something that makes me happy. But that's just me. I'm talking from my own personal frame of reference. And also, remember, guys, this is an ace space, and you should create ace spaces wherever you can. Ace spaces matter a whole lot, and they don't just matter for the people in your lives who are publicly and openly asexual, because the reality is the people in your lives who are publicly and openly asexual and aspec and gad are not everyone in your lives who are asexual, aspec, or gad. It's really important that look, stop telling mom on us, Smitty. I'm getting tired of your tattling. Snitches get stitches. I can't believe in a live stream I just said that snitches get stitches. It's a weird day, y'all. But it's important that we create spaces and cultures that are open and that are capable of having conversations about things that are generally defined as being in the asexual sphere. A lot of these things aren't actually in the asexual sphere. They aren't actually uniquely pertaining to asexuals, but because of the way we've been trained to think about things like sex and sexuality, we conflate so many different things with asexuality. And that's part of the reason why we need to have so many frustrating conversations. Earlier today, Atheistic Snail and I were in a conversation with a really cool person who is not asexual, or at the very least, I don't know if they're asexual. If Atheistic Snail is here, or if she checks out this video later, I hope if I'm wrong, she'll correct me. But this person was asking questions about asexuality. And they were asking questions specifically about I guess, relationships between aspec people and non-aspec people. And they were talking about things like marriage. And the person was like, yeah, but can you like get married to a non-aspec person if you are aspec? And I talked about okay, cool. Thank you, Atheistic Snail. I'm glad I was right. But they were talking about things like that, and they were just like, yeah, but what about the non-aspec person who might be worried about like having sex with them? And I had to step in. I was asked to step in, but oh no, oh goodness, I'm worried. I'm worried, Zal. Oh no, that is not good news. I saw I saw Jenna's comment and I had to like look at what Zal said. Oh goodness. But what they were saying was they were worried about asexual people in relationships with non-asexual people and things like sexual negotiations and all that. And because of the way that people who are sexual, people who experience sexual attraction, understand sex and sexuality, they had conflated attraction and enjoyment. And one of the big things that I said, and I think that this is something that a lot of people need to hear, is that just the state of being asexual, aspec, or gad does not mean that you are incapable of enjoying sex. It means that you experience no or very little sexual attraction, but that is not the same thing as not enjoying sex. That's not even the same thing as not desiring sex. At some point, I am going to have a conversation about things like libido, because these are really important terms that benefit everyone, but especially benefit brand new aces, aspecs, and gads who are confused and who are worried because they still experience some level of undirected sexual desire. That's what a libido is. A libido is a sort of undirected sexual drive or sexual urge. And it's not, once again, a keyword here is undirected. It's not aimed at anyone or anything, but it still causes people to want to do things it still causes people to want to do sexual things. And for a lot of people who don't have that much of an understanding of asexuality, that can seem like someone who is not ace or aspec or gad. And max capacity twittering. Oh yeah. I don't understand. Oh man. Oh, I see Tria's comment now. Yeah, Twitter's been a fun place, guys. Once again, if you don't follow me on Twitter, you should. I am Luciano Writes, and I'm also Luciano Joshua G1. I'm gonna plug myself. That's fine. Also, that sounds kinky. But understanding the importance about things like libido and sexual attraction, understanding those differences is actually really important. And it's something that helps us develop a more healthy understanding of asexuality. There is a definition of asexuality that conflates all like sexual feelings and urges. And that's a very bad definition for a range of reasons, because asexuality in its perfect definition, or at the very least in an improved definition, is actually just talking about sexual attraction. And there are definitely people who do not have a libido and who are also asexual. But there are people who don't have a libido who are not asexual. So these are things that we need to understand. And these are things we need to be capable of having a healthy conversation about. Developing a better sexual culture is an important step in this process. And one of the things that is important about this is understanding that it's up to us, especially those of us who are ace, aspec, or gad, and who are lucky enough to be open and public about these things, to elevate the discourse. Because one of the real problems is that the discourse's quality is really low. The discourse is in a really bad place right now, because we still have people asking, and we still have people fighting about really basic questions, like, are asexuals queer? The answer is yes, we are queer. This isn't about Oppression Olympics. This isn't even really about representation. It's about honesty, and it's about elevating the discourse so that way people don't get hurt, so that way people aren't confused, that way people have a healthy sense of understanding and they know who they are and where they belong. And labels are an important part of that, so are understanding things like having a better definition of what it means to be queer, what it means to be LGBTQ+. All of those things are related. And it's up to people like us to elevate the discourse. I'm hoping that by having these videos, even if not every single one of them is just a banger that contains nothing but truth bombs, I'm playing a role in that. I like to believe that I am. I think it's super cool. Oh, okay. Let's see. Found out 11 of my state's lawmakers. Oh, ooh, yeah, that state. I'm not going to say what state that is. I know what state that is. It doesn't exactly take a genius to figure it out. That's a rough state. That's a rough state to live in. Yikes. Did not know that was your state, by the way. Oh, wait. Yeah, I did. I forgot. I'm not good at geography. I'm American. But yeah, so yeah, that's a rough situation to be in. I actually thought about writing a Patheos article about that, and then I saw. So for those of you who don't know, I run the Sin God blog over on Patheos. That's a thing I talk about a decent amount on Twitter. I don't often talk about it on YouTube. Lately, I've actually been making articles. This week I had 2 articles. I talked about Senator Mitch McConnell's ridiculous comments about reparations, and I also talked about the Bladensburg Peace Cross case in the Supreme Court. Both of those were, really big deals that were also kind of understated, especially the Bladensburg Peace Cross, because Senator Mitch McConnell is just, everyone knows that like he's not good, and everyone knows that like if he says something, it's going to be something dumb and inaccurate. But like the Bladensburg Peace Cross was actually like a huge deal, and a lot of people talked about that. I talked about it from the context of like history, and I explained I talked briefly about symbols and stuff. I liked my article on it, but there were also a whole bunch of other really good Patheos articles about it, not just from Patheos Non-Religious, which is the channel that I write for, but also a whole bunch of other channels. So if you want to read about Bladensburg and you've already seen like the Washington Post article, you've already seen the New York Times, you've already seen the Huffington Post, all of which were really solid articles, and you want to see other perspectives and takes, I definitely recommend checking out Patheos. I strongly thought about making videos on both of these topics this week, but then I realized that like, and this is something I kind of want to talk about now that we're in the little off topic section. At this point, we're officially off topic, guys. Congratulations, we did it. But I wanted to make like a video about it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do any really good filming for both of those topics. So after trying for a few minutes in both cases, I decided it'd be better if I just wrote an article about it, especially because I've been wanting to use my Patheos platform a lot more, and I've been wanting to use it more intelligently. So I did that. I've also been writing a lot more regularly on Patheos because I wrote for Patheos like hyper religiously for a while. I had at least an article a week, and then I stopped because life got too busy. And then every once in a while I'd start writing again, and then I'd stop. Some of my favorite articles of mine on Patheos are ones where like I talk about the Book of Life and Coco, I talk about their afterlives, and I talk about the fact that they're both movies about the Day of the Dead, which is really neat. I compare and contrast their afterlife, and I also mention the actual Nahuatl afterlife. I talk about it, so that's really neat. But that article was from last December, so it was from a while ago. But yeah, I do a lot of really good stuff. Am I sure we're going the right way? Honestly, if it's any conversation with me, it probably does need to take a left turn. I'm very good at derailing conversations. And if you guys watch Wonder Lady, you know that's definitely a thing that happens. But yeah. And also, I am an atheist who writes religiously. I like writing a lot more than I like making videos because like in writing, I'm a lot more factual. I'm also like ferociously opinionated in my writing, but like I stick to facts. I cite things. I'm a lot better at like data and stuff when I write, but then my videos tend to be so much more fun, and my live streams especially, because I generally do live streams by myself on my channel. There are only a couple of videos where I've had other people. And I think it's fun because I basically get to just stream of consciousness. And the reality is a lot of people don't know this about me as like a person who don't know me offline, but I'm extraordinarily talkative. It's just that there are only certain people I actually like talking to. Jamie and I have been on the phone before, so Jamie can confirm this. I talk a whole lot. It's just that I have to like people for me to be able to talk to them. This annoys Anna, my partner, significantly because I just talk so much. It's a lot. And it's because there's so few people that I want to talk to that I guess just like the level of which I want to talk just starts to go up exponentially. And then I see time and I'm just like, okay, now it's time for me to talk. And on live streams, I really try to rein this in unless it's like a private live stream or whatever. Oh no, I don't trust Zal. You guys, you should never trust your DM. If your DM ever says things like, it will be fine, it's no big deal, you'll be fine. No, that's a bad sign. I'm half expecting Asmodeus to just be like, hey guys, how's it going? Just do the PewDiePie greeting, and then at the end just be like, it's Asmodeus instead of it's PewDiePie. I used to be really big into PewDiePie, like way back in the day. I haven't watched his content in several years, but like a while ago, like when Anna and I were first dating. So at the middle of 2013, I was a huge PewDiePie fan. I like PewDiePie was probably my favorite YouTuber, and that was back in the day when I was your D&D god is going to kill us. Oh no. So far, I haven't almost died in Zal's campaign, except for in our first fight. That was the only time that I was actually like in danger. But now I know that like Zal, I'm willing myself, like I'm preparing my character to be ready to leave this mortal coil and I don't know, ascend. Um, So Smitty, in my case, I just really liked the energy, and I didn't know about Jacksepticeye yet. Jacksepticeye is a far better YouTuber, just all around. But like PewDiePie back in the day was like someone with a whole lot of energy, and that was when I was first starting to get really interested in YouTube. I had a YouTube channel that I ran at that time. I've had a YouTube channel consistently since 2009. It's just that there would always be long stretches where I wouldn't post videos, and it was not this channel. This channel started in like 2016. I started making videos on this channel like right when I first started it. And then I just sort of stopped for a while. And then I got an actual camera. And then I started making actual videos. And then there have been periods where I'd like start and stop. But Jacksepticeye is an Irish YouTuber who does Let's Plays too. He has tremendous energy. And sometimes in a YouTuber, you just kind of want that. If I ever want like calmer YouTubers, I can definitely watch calmer YouTubers. But when I watch Let's Players, I really want the commentary. So I prefer someone who's just like basically high on caffeine all the time. And that's a matter of personal preference. But yeah. Also, I'm not the only person I know who is super into PewDiePie. I got a whole bunch of my friends into PewDiePie in Honduras. And that was back when PewDiePie was first starting to take off. And then like my current partner and I watched some PewDiePie videos together because my partner really likes Let's Players too. I used to be super into like Let's Play YouTube, and I wanted to make Let's Plays. I even actually have made Let's Plays. I made really boring Let's Plays of Gat Out of Hell, which was the most recent Saints Row game that is like directly a Saints Row game. Now there is Agents of Mayhem, which is like a Saints Row spinoff. But I actually had a couple of videos from my last year of college, like the last couple of weeks I was in college, where I tried to do a Let's Play of Saints Row Gat Out of Hell, actually off of like a camera. I recorded me playing on a TV. I didn't have the technology to like stream. So I had my PlayStation 3. I had Saints Row, and I would play Saints Row, and I had to record. I made like a little desk for my camera, and I recorded. And those videos were very boring. They were very bad. Absolutely shouldn't watch them. But it was fun. I did this finger just now. just in case anyone's curious. It was fun. I didn't actually try to like be super serious or anything. I didn't want to talk about Dante's Inferno. I thought it'd be fun to talk about the idea of like the layers of hell while also doing just running around hell and blowing stuff up. But once again, those videos are just really bad. I have a Twitch channel. I follow Zal and a whole bunch of other people, including like some really neat YouTubers like Doug. And I still want to do like let's play streamy videos, but I want to actually have a computer that can handle all of that, and I don't. So not gonna do that for a while. But yeah. It was very sad, and those videos were also very bad. But I do think that I'm gonna say I guess I'll be serious for a little bit longer. This video, I apologize, this video was so off, but I did want to have this conversation. I think that this is an important conversation to have. I do think that we began stuff here. I think that we gave each other some ideas. I hope that I inspired y'all to have conversations with your partners, if you haven't already, about things like physical intimacy, about things like sex and sexuality. And I hope that this series continues to be a useful tool, even if not every single video is just, absolutely perfect. It's cool that some videos are just going to be less. One of the things that comes with live streaming is that you're always at the risk of being a little bit off. So, but also I had fun today. I hope you guys had fun. I think that this was important stuff. I really do. That's right. If you come to a live stream on my channel, the guy whose first video about asexuality talked about asexuality in the context of an alien furry, that's right. You came here for the formal lecture-like atmosphere. But I am still going to be doing Asexuality O'Clock live streams and interviews. It's just that these last 2 weeks and probably the next 2 weeks are going to be extraordinarily busy. So I'm hoping that I will have at least one video up this week and another video up next week, probably a pre-recorded one, that talked about things formally and hopefully funnily. I am going to be doing another Asexuality O'Clock regular, not live stream, that talks about some stuff in the next couple of days. I don't know if I'm going to be putting it up before the beginning of July, but I do hope that everyone here... Alien furries are awesome. In case anyone is curious about the specific jokes I was making, some people here have seen this video since then. But last year, around the same time, almost exactly like a year ago, I made a video where I came out as asexual. And in that video, like that wasn't my coming out video. People already knew that I was asexual. But that was the first video I ever made talking about asexuality. I made jokes about Ace Hardlight, the antagonist from the game, from the spin-off Ratchet and Clank game named Ratchet Deadlocked. And it's, to this day, one of my favorite videos because it's so stupid. But it actually does talk about serious stuff. I just use it. It's the first video I ever made where I had like the sort of conversationally atmosphere where I did the, I guess, multiple characters, one actor thing that like ContraPoints and Not Even Emily and a couple of other YouTubers do. I did that because I wanted to have a conversation about asexuality and I didn't know just how to do it. So I talked about the idea of romantic versus sexual attraction. And it was just a really fun video. It was also the first video that I made that wasn't a live stream that was like over 16 minutes long. So yeah, it does take a little bit to get through, and I apologize for that. But I'm definitely going to be doing more Asexuality O'Clock videos. It actually kind of inspired some of the Asexuality O'Clock videos that I've made since. It's just that, like, when I made that video, I didn't realize I'd be leaving Greensboro so soon after, because when I made that video, I left Greensboro less than 3 weeks later. And I actually did make it during Pride. I remember specifically referencing... I'm such a big fan of the fact that I have people in my audience who also appreciate the Ratchet and Clank series. I have a PlayStation 2, and the only games I want to be able to play on it, I could not care about any other series, are Ratchet and Clank. And the thing that sucks is that the PlayStation is like irreparably broken. So them's the breaks, I guess. But I'm really happy to be creating this sort of content. I'm really happy to be having these sorts of fun conversations with y'all. I think that we talk about a lot of important stuff. I do hope that if anyone needs any advice about any of these sorts of topics, they feel free to come and talk to me. I think that these are important things. I am creating an advice column. I mentioned this. This is going to be the last thing that I talk about, because this is an important enough thing that I think I might have referenced last week, but in case I didn't, I'm going to say it again. I am, in fact, creating an advice column that talks about issues related to the GAD spectrum. So grays, aces, arrows, and dummies. That is a really important thing. So I wanted to get a PS2 emulator. I did get a PS2 emulator on my gaming laptop. The only problem is apparently like all the ROMs and I think like Emu Paradise got taken down, which was where I was going to go for my ROMs. And I know other places exist, but you guys, it's a miracle I could download the like gaming emulator. I don't know how to technology. I know that I'm a millennial, but like I was raised in Latin America. Come on, cut me some slack. It is really important that we continue to have these conversations. It is really important. The comments over here are very distracting. It's really important that we continue to have these conversations. One of the next big articles that I'm working on for Patheos is me talking about asexuality, demisexuality, and the GAD spectrum. And it's also me talking about why it is that I want to make an advice column. And the reality is there are a lot of people, especially recently, now that I've started creating this sort of content a lot more aggressively, who've come over to me and who've wanted advice. And it's because some of them were just discovering that they were asexual. Some of them were just starting to feel comfortable using the term to describe themselves. And they wanted to have like real conversations about these sorts of things, and they didn't know how. And it's because there is no real advice column for this sort of stuff. There are great articles that are published on places like AVEN and on places like the Asexual Journal, but an advice column that like exists for people to ask questions is not a thing that I'm aware exists. And I've asked other folks, other people don't know of one that exists that is specifically for the GAD spectrum. So I'm hoping to fix that. It's going to be something that's going to take me a long time to do. And that's something frustrating, but I am going to make it happen. And I'm hoping that when I make it happen, I continue to be over here having these sorts of conversations on my YouTube channel, and also having a space for people who want direct answers and who want to engage in real conversations. I think that those are really important things that need to exist and that should exist. And I'm hoping to devote some of my abilities and some of my, I guess, mental space to creating those. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, let me know. I do need to get back in contact with some of the people who reached out to me and wanted to help. It's just that, once again, these last 2 weeks have been extraordinarily busy. But that said, I am going to let y'all go. I appreciate you guys so much for coming in, hanging out. I really like that people stayed past the hour and just continue to chat. And also, I'm going to be contacting people for like stuff like the Emu Paradise stuff that I mentioned. It's just that, once again, got some potentially big news coming in tomorrow that is weighing on my mind kind of 24/7, and it's been killing me this entire weekend. Real life is not the funnest thing, guys, but it has the potential, at the very least for me, to get a lot more fun depending on what news I hear tomorrow. But yeah, there wasn't an hour time limit. It's just that I like allotted an hour, and I tend to be like a stickler about these sorts of things. I generally try to do under an hour, but today it was just fun. I actually don't know if any of these live streams have lasted less than an hour. I think the one last week might have lasted like just under an hour, but I'm pretty sure all of them have gone over. Wait, if I have the... I'm going to have to Google that because I didn't know that. But bye, guys. I'll talk to y'all later.